we're going to welcome in special guest Mario Garza. Mario, thanks for joining us tonight.
No, thanks for having me.
You know, Mario, I entered into an agreement that I'm writing for Yes Network online. I'm writing for their website. And I wrote a column and I threw it out there. The off season, you have time to kind of drill down and take a look at some things. And, you know, I was very intrigued with some statistics that I came up with when it came to pitching and when it came to variance and separation in velocity from a pitcher's hardest pitch to his slowest pitch. Elite pitchers have their fastballs average in the mid-90s, maybe let's say 94 miles an hour. And I took 6 elite pitchers and I put them all together. But what was very, very telling to me is that their slowest off-speed pitch was 78.9 miles per hour. So there's a real variance. There's a 15-mile-an-hour variance. And when I looked at these elite pitchers, most of them got their real good separation, got their slowest velocity, if you will, on the good old-fashioned curveball. And now, Mario, what I'm noticing is, and I'm going to project ahead, I'm going to make a little bit of a prediction. When you look at the Yankees starting rotation, and you looked at how many of these pitchers and how often they threw the good old-fashioned curveball, it was not much at all. And when you think of Gerrit Cole and where he came from, the Houston Astros, he took his career to another level. When he got to Houston, he started throwing more curveballs, and that gave him separation. And there's a term that is known as tunneling. And what he was doing was he started throwing his fastball up in the zone when he got to Houston on their suggestion. So he's throwing his fastball up in the zone, and he's throwing that good old-fashioned 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock curveball. So both pitches, the fastball and the curve, are starting out through the same tunnel, high up by your letters. One is coming in straight, the fastball, and the other one is dropping off the table 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Mario, I'm going to tell you, I think between Gerrit Cole, and I'd like for you to give me a couple of thoughts about Gerrit Cole, talk about checking off all the boxes. But he's somebody that has this ability in him to not only want to be great, but he's got a little bit of a coach in him where he's very willing to share his thoughts. I think you're going to see, just a prediction on my part, you're going to see more curveballs being thrown across the board by Yankee pitchers than they have in the past.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. There's a couple guys that I saw that have been messing around with it in the bullpen, and I think it's definitely, it's funny you say that, and your predictions usually do come true from my experience. So, but yeah, so there are a couple guys that are messing around with the curveball, and as far as Gerrit Cole, you're exactly right. It's pretty cool to see even the veteran guys have and to not go, and whenever he's talking or whenever he's on the bullpen, there's a crowd around him because he shares a lot of knowledge. You can tell he's passionate about his craft, and so it's one of those things that everybody wants to just get into his mind and kind of get a little piece of the genius that makes him who he is, and he's been very open.
Wow. You know, it's so bittersweet. That was only recorded 3 days ago, and with all of the events going on in the world, let's just, if we can, we'll go back to the last episode if we can, and we'll go over to the next graphic. What's the difference? You could see I wrote that column on February 11th, and so we'll fast forward, and if we can, if we go over to our next graphic, the Mets, lo and behold, start talking about exactly what I was talking about, velocity separation. And as you know, Anthony, I've been screaming about that with the Yankees, that they're overlooking that for it feels like about the last decade. But I'll certainly say going back at least as far as Phil Hughes, and then Pineda, and then Severino. So it's close enough to a decade. What I like to do is I like to just play quick audio. Let's see if this...
Go outing for Thor, but Luis Rojas at least said he had some good stuff.
I like DeVito's separation,
fastball firm, and the separation of his breaking ball was pretty good.
I haven't heard that one before.
It makes sense, yes. But velo separation.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You understand what it means, but I've not heard it phrased that way.
No, never.
That's and there has been a lot of talk about the.
So, I guess they don't watch this show. And I guess, possibly they don't read my website because they never heard of it, on WFAN. Expectations couldn't be higher. And expectations couldn't be higher on tonight's starting pitcher, ace Gerrit Cole. It was almost a year ago to the day that I sat down and I wrote an email to my Yankee contact and I said, there are a million storylines to this game and this season. I'll only mention one. The key to tonight's game is Gerrit Cole's knuckle curve. I went on to say, Cole has not been great in September. So much has been mentioned about the sticky stuff and his hammy. But the key is that in his last outing, he only threw 2 knuckle curves against the Blue Jays. I went on to say, not good, and if he does it again, Boston will jump him, Boston will ambush that fastball, and he will get hit hard. I said this before the game to my Yankee contact, and the reason why I felt it was so critical to get that message through was because I knew the ramifications of October baseball, and if our $300 million man didn't get the job done, it just ratchets up the pressure that much more, exponentially more. So now what we had in that game, and this was my follow-up to my Yankee contact after the wild card game, I said, well, the wild card game, the final score was Red Sox 6, Yankees 2. Gerrit Cole went 2 innings plus, 4 hits, 2 home runs, 3 earned. In his first 45 pitches, Gerrit Cole threw 2 knuckle curves. And just as I predicted, it was the shortest outing of his career. Well, he can redeem himself tonight, ladies and gentlemen. He gets the ball versus the Cleveland Guardians. If he wants to be that $300 million pitcher that Hal opened up the checkbook for, he needs to do what I mentioned and I put in writing, and that statistics prove it out. He needs to be that complete pitcher. He needs to be an elite artist, not a flamethrower. He needs to go out, yes, establish the 99-mile-an-hour fastball. Go up and in. Keep these guys off the plate. Then go down and away. Then throw the slider. But also mix in that 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock knuckle curve that starts high in the zone, and it has approximately 54 inches of vertical drop. Some like to call it nose to toes. Okay? So it's going to have a shape of a 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock shape to it. It's going to go from nose to toes. It's going to go straight down. You do that. You start that pitch at the top of the zone, at the letters, and you couple that and you tunnel that with your high fastball at times. Guaranteed success, guaranteed dominance.
Him at least a tie game and wiped out that 1-0 lead. He really bore down and was able to pitch into the 7th.
Yeah, I really liked his mix of pitches. I think you can go back to the first inning. Obviously, the air extended that inning, cost him a few extra pitches. And so, you want to get out that first inning quickly, 1, 2, 3, get back in the dugout. So that certainly wasn't ideal. But beyond that, he didn't let anything bother him tonight. We've seen Gerrit Cole, maybe if there was a missed call from an umpire or an error behind him, kind of that he's tightly wound a little bit. And then maybe that can get him a little overexcited at times. That was not the case tonight. He was completely composed. He kept making pitch after pitch. he had a very definitive game plan too, and that was to bring his knuckle curve along for the ride. Usually we see fastball slider as predominantly his top two pitches. That knuckle curve came right up on level with his slider. It was very effective. We saw on the graphic earlier there was 8 swing and misses on that knuckle curve, including only 1 ball put in play off of that. So to me, that protects his slider. His slider's still his best secondary pitch, but the knuckle curve coming along and being used from a distribution standpoint almost on an equal level really, to me, is the story with Gerrit Cole and his game plan. Very effective in my mind, the way he used those 2 breaking balls.